From B Media Production, this is B Podcasting. Engage your audience with audio communication.
Hi and welcome to episode 7 of B Podcasting, the podcast that explores the huge opportunities podcasts can bring to businesses looking for innovative ways to grow their brand. I'm Nick Schildberger, and one of those businesses is arguably Australia's most effective media companies when it comes to engagement. And in this episode, we'll hear from Kylie Rogers, the Managing Director of Mamamia. If you've been living under a rock, Mamamia has built a huge online community by creating mountains of content from articles, videos, and an ever-increasing arsenal of podcasts. So we'll hear why they've embraced podcasting, how it fits with their overall strategy, and how it's attractive to advertisers. But before that, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and podcast aficionado, Chris Ashmore.
G'day, Nick.
I'm keen to hear about Mamamia's podcast network, so shall we get straight to it?
Let's do it. I'm very excited with today's guest, the MD of Mamamia, Kylie Rogers. And just a bit of background, Mamamia started in 2007 as a blog by Mia Friedman, the former editor of Australian Cosmopolitan magazine. And look, more than any media company, Mamamia has embraced podcasting to help solidify and build its audience. And I asked Kylie why the decision to do so much podcasting.
It was back in, from memory, early 2014. And it was when cereal became part of everyone's vernacular. People were talking about podcasts over dinner, over lunch, in their offices. And it made us realise that no one was doing great audio content for women in Australia. So we built ourselves a little mobile podcast studio in our Sydney office and our Melbourne office. And we launched our first podcast, Mamamia Out Loud, which is what women are talking about this week with 3 of our key talent. Within 3 months, it won the iTunes Best New Podcast. And we thought, we're on to something here. Let's keep going. Fast forward, and today we are producing 18 podcasts a week. Oh. According to iTunes, we are the world's largest podcast network for women. And you can engage with our podcasts on our own Mamamia podcast app on iTunes. Qantas and Virgin have our podcasts on their in-flight entertainment. And you can also find it obviously on iTunes and Spotify.
That's fantastic. And you've had, as you say, you're producing 18 podcasts a week. How do you come up with the ideas for these podcasts?
There are so many ideas swirling through this office. The good thing about podcasts and women is women have an insatiable appetite for content, but we're generally really busy. So there's a limit to screen time. What podcast offers is mobility. So women want to dive into verticals of content, be that how to navigate divorce, be that pop culture and the best books that they should be reading right now, celebrity, wellness, you name it. They can engage with that while they're running, while they're in transit, when they're cooking and cleaning. We have a little podcast hotline. It's just a mobile phone number, and women ring it and leave ideas for our next podcast of ours, or just talk to us about why they love our podcasts. And they love the mobility element of it, and they love media on their own terms. So, I think we're just about to celebrate our 20 millionth download, which is extraordinary. We launched our latest podcast last weekend, and that's Tell Me It's Going to Be Okay. And that's with Mia Friedman and Amelia Lester. And it's about politics, ultimately about Trump and what's going on in America and around the world. And it's because we know women are frightened. They're concerned about where we're heading. So we grabbed Amelia and we launched this podcast. It's now #1 in the news category. It got 5,000 downloads in 36 hours. And so we know it's what women are talking about today. And that, I guess, is our secret sauce, is making sure we anticipate her needs and we know what women are talking about.
Do you think that other general media don't quite understand or are not providing the issues that Mamamia does that women are interested in? Perhaps they just don't get it?
Look, a lot of them are quite traditional and they still see women's interest in groups. So parenting and cooking and health. And it's quite specific. But we know women are talking about parenting, pelvic floor and politics all in the one conversation. We're quite generalist in our views. So Yeah, I think we have an authentic take that differentiates us to our competitors out there.
Now, you just mentioned a little earlier that you produce a mountain of content, not just podcasts, but articles online and videos as well. How does the podcast network tie in with the rest of the content that you produce? I assume there's some underlying strategy involved, of course, that you're striving to achieve, and if so, what is it?
We have a really strong core purpose here at the network, and it's to make the world a better place for women and girls. So there's an authenticity about it. We didn't develop Mamamia to chase what you call the pink dollar. We're here to genuinely make the world a better place for women and girls. And right now we do that through authentic content. And we bring our clients along for the ride, creating authentic branded content. And we do that through video, through written and through podcasts. So our podcast themes may be separate to the themes we tackle within video and within written, but it all sits under that very clear core purpose. And we have 3 focus points, I guess, to make women laugh, to make women learn, and to help women in all facets of their life.
And you're doing it well. It seems that I read almost daily the increase of Mamamia, the Mamamia network. I think you have, 100 staff now or more?
Yes, thank you. I started early 2014 and there were 30 of us. And yeah, you're right, we have 100 FTEs as it stands today. We have an office in Melbourne, we have sales staff in Brisbane, the majority are in our head office in Sydney, and we have a nascent product in New York where we're testing and learning and getting to better understand American women through our product Spring Street.
And how's that going?
It's good. We only launched it in September last year. It's had nice organic growth. But as I said, we've deliberately gone with something different to Mamamia so we can get it right and test and learn, because it's a very, very different market to Australia. I mean, ultimately, women's needs are global needs, and how we create content here in Australia is no different to the way we're creating content in America. But it's about getting to know what American women want. So, it's going great. It's early days, but it's going great.
When it comes to advertising, do you have a core list or portfolio of brands and advertisers that can reach your entire audience, or do you have specific advertisers for podcasts that are different from the other content?
In 99% of the case, our clients come via our sales team with a business problem, and we will look to solve that business problem through branded storytelling. And based on the budget and the specific needs of the client, we'll come back with a solution that's across all of our platforms. So there'll be a podcast solution, there'll be a video solution, and there'll be a written content solution. Or it will be quite specific and we may come up with a bespoke podcast just for that client. But it absolutely depends on the needs of that product and of that client. From a podcast perspective, we offer what we call generous host reads. We offer bespoke client podcasts, and we also offer just simple 30-second radio reads. What's great about podcasts is it's really intimate, and women are leaning in. They're choosing to better understand what content we're tackling within that podcast. And so they want to be there. And we have something like 82% unaided ad recall for all of our clients who are sponsoring our podcast, and it is very, very effective. So I've just come off a 2-day strat planning session, and we're looking at the profitability of our business sectors. And podcast as a standalone business unit is very profitable. We're doing very, very well in that space.
That's fantastic. I mean, one of the questions I was thinking of asking is that if you had your podcast network as a sole business, would it be making money in its own right? Would it be profitable in its own right?
Yeah, and it absolutely is. We've just done that analysis, looking at obviously all the costs related to creating podcasts, and all the commercial revenues that come in for podcasts. And it is a growing, profitable sector. And I am looking to forecast 60 to 80% growth next year in that business sector alone.
Wow, goodness. Now, I've read somewhere that you've developed some branded podcasts for Foxtel and Morris Blackburn Lawyers and others. Can you provide some details on how you've created these podcasts? Did they approach you or did you approach them?
No, our best work is when our clients trust us and recognise that our audience trusts our brand and we know how to speak to our women. And so they ultimately come to us to say this is, again, our business problem or the conversation we want to start having with our female targeted audience. So can you come up with a bespoke plan? And they usually have podcasts in mind in the first instance and come up with a podcast series that we know will resonate to our market. So, yeah, we did that with Morris Blackburn Lawyers. We've done that with Foxtel, 10-part series with Foxtel. We created a bespoke podcast series for Intel in the back-to-school period over December, January last year. And very recently, a bespoke podcast for Westpac with our Hello Bump pregnancy podcast.
When it comes to directing messages from the advertisers in the podcasts, how do you handle that? Do you simply insert an ad or how do you...
Yeah. Yes, there is the simple radio read, which is this podcast is proudly brought to you by blah, and then there's just a product script, and that's 30 seconds to a minute long. That's the simplest way you can engage with our podcasts. And then the next one is your generous host read. So partway through an editorial podcast, the hosts will, in an engaging and authentic way, start talking about the client's brand messages and product features. And it does depend on what the client wants to do. And often you'll find that our hosts have been talking for 8 minutes in and around why this product's working for them at the time. And that's very powerful. And then the last piece is, of course, what we just spoke about, which is creating full podcasts for a client, so bespoke client podcasts. It's not an editorial podcast, it is a full branded podcast that sits on the client's assets as well as our assets.
And what about feedback? How do you receive feedback from the audience? Are you able to measure what people think and what works and what doesn't work?
The feedback we get on a daily basis is extraordinary. We seem to be the friends that these women either don't have or haven't got time to access on a regular basis. We get a lot of support from regional women and Australian expats who just love to hear the sound of Australian women's voices. We get lots and lots of feedback, mostly positive through our mobile hotline and lots of ideas around new podcast series coming from our own consumers. We write around each of our podcasts on a weekly basis, so there'll be a written article that's amplified across our assets, and we get a lot of feedback via the comments section on our website and on Facebook. So it's not hard for us to have a two-way conversation with our consumers on what they're loving, what's missing, and what they want next.
So it really is a communication or a community that you're building and allowing people to be part of the conversation, and podcasts do that.
Yeah, and podcasts do that. We've launched a communications agency called Broad, which helps clients accelerate their relationship with their female consumer. And through that, we've launched what's called Broad Pulse, which is a real-time survey, I guess, for want of a better, where we have an engaged panel of women who are answering our questions, be they client-related or otherwise, on a real-time basis. And we're able to funnel a lot of those insights and analytics back through to our clients on what women are feeling or how women feel about their products. So that's another way where we can have a two-way conversation.
Why aren't other larger organisations, media organisations, doing this? You're doing it so well. Or are they doing it? Are you going to be seeing competition sometime soon?
Absolutely. Look, the radio networks have been doing it for some time. I would argue they're not necessarily podcasts. They're just reshaping their radio shows via podcasts. But the likes of Nova are starting to look at bespoke entertainment podcasts. We're seeing the likes of News Limited trying more podcasts. Fairfax are trying more podcasts. Nine are trying podcasts. It's early days for them. So we are definitely seeing our competitors ramp up. But we're 3 years ahead of them, and it's my job and my team's job to stay ahead of the pack and to stay as leaders in that space.
Well, speaking of head of the pack, you've been delving into the United States. The current direction that the US is in today, do you see Australia catching up to the way they're embracing podcasting?
Absolutely no doubt. The way we've seen our women embrace podcasts has been phenomenal, and that is only going to grow. So, yes, the US podcast market is enormous, and we are quickly following in their footsteps. We were going to launch a Spring Street podcast network, but we have recognised that Mamamia podcast network has a global brand, certainly through iTunes and the Spotify platform. We are seeing more and more international audience, and so we will keep it as Mamamia and start to look at how we can globalise our new up-and-coming podcast series.
Now, if we can turn to what you listen to, Kylie, I don't know if you're allowed to say which are your favourite Mamamia podcasts.
Right.
You'd probably have to say that they're all as equally as good, but what is your favourite?
Depends on my mood, but the three I can't go past every week is No Filter. I don't know how she does it, which is a fantastic podcast celebrating busy mums. You know, I'm a busy mum, managing director of Mamamia, and I've got 3 children. And I love that we celebrate the busyness and the chaos of working women. And that's a beautiful series. And I can't go past This Glorious Mess, which, again, celebrates parenting with one of our key talent, Holly, here at Mamamia, and Andrew Daddo. It's fantastic to have a male voice. You know, Mamamia is great content created by women for women, but we love men as well. So it's really nice to have more male voices, and Andrew Daddo does a great job on This Glorious Mess. So I think they're probably my 3 staples. I've just started to listen to Tell Me It's Going to Be Okay, which is probably a bit more of a grown-up version to Mamamia Out Loud. But, you know, we're all very busy, and it's hard to squeeze 35, 40-minute podcasts in our day. But, yeah, they're 3 to 4 that I would listen to weekly.
Well, final question, Kylie. Of course, Mamamia's gone gangbusters these last few years. What's the future for Mamamia in general, but particularly with podcasting?
Thank you. It has been phenomenal success, and we have every intention to continue with that phenomenal success. Publishing is an ever-changing environment. We have to keep up with what our consumer wants. We have to keep up with technology. So for us, it's about building out our audience on our site and off our site and making sure we have the right platform partners. We're doing very, very well on the Apple News platform. We're doing great on the MSN platform. What are the next platforms that we need to be pushing our content onto? Where are women at the moment and how are they engaging with content? So I'm forever thinking about how to increase our audience on and off site. We got a Screen Australia grant last year to allow us to increase our video output. So we're very focused on creating more original content series for video. But podcasts, it's about how do we produce more, how do we help clients produce more, and how do we look to creating our own platform where other publishers and other content creators are using our platform to accelerate their growth. So lots of discussion in and around how to amplify our Mamamia podcast network asset to help others in the podcasting space, and also to always ensure that we are delivering what our women want on a daily and hourly basis.
That's Mamamia's Kylie Rogers.
quite an impressive story of growth from a single blog to a enormous player in the media space in Australia now and around the world. And it's fantastic to hear from our point of view that podcasts are playing such a significant role in that growth. I guess Mamamia was quite clever to get ahead of the curve and start podcasting several years ago when podcasting was in its infancy, really.
Well, they recognised it straight away. I mean, she mentioned Serial, and of course that's the marker that everyone sort of puts themselves at with this huge spurt of podcasting. But they really got stuck into it, and it's paid off, hasn't it?
Yeah, they jumped in at the right time. And Kylie was quick to identify that busy people just don't have time for screen time anymore. And so it's a common theme that comes up in this podcast series, but podcasts are perfect for digesting while on the go. Mm-hmm. There's actually a bit of a self-promotion here, but our Business Essentials audio magazine that incidentally we've been doing for 33 years, I think it is now, we used to use the marketing line, turn drive time into profit time, as corny as that sounds. But just getting back to Mamamia for just one sec, they're a great example of how you can grow listeners across a network of podcasts. And having an audience or growing an audience is a lot easier when you've got a database or someone to promote your podcast to. And I think that's something that we've talked about in previous episodes, that one-man podcasters are going to find it harder to stand out from the crowd now when there's 360,000 podcasts. I mean, good quality and good content are really a given now. You have to do that. But to get to your audience, you've also got to do some marketing. And I often say to clients, a good podcast is only as good as the marketing behind it.
Well, that's absolutely right. To have that communication is hard to do. But if I can throw in a self-promotion as well, B Media Production produces the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons podcast. It's called Post-Op, and we've been doing that for quite a long time now. But it's funny, just this week we did an interview with Dr. Katrina Hutchison on the topic of unconscious sexism in the world of surgery, or the effects of unconscious sexism in surgery. And look, that's generated a lot of hits, twice as many as any previous podcast. The topic, I think, is resonating a lot with the community. Did you know that only 10% of surgeons in Australia are female? And that's in comparison to 50% of all medical graduates are female.
So where are they going?
Where are they not going? They're not turning up at the, in the surgery room, and why is that? And so there's an exploration of those issues, and as Dr. Hutchison says, the unconscious sexism that permeates through all workplaces. But the point is that this has resonated. This discussion has resonated, and the conversations on Facebook and other social media has stemmed from such an engaging topic as a podcast. And I think that medium provides that channel of communication. It's not a one-way thing.
Which is where, bringing it back to Mamamia, is where they're successful because they've got all platforms covered. They do social, video, blogging. They've got the whole lot. So the podcast network has fitted in perfectly into that mix because they've got that audience. They can move from different topic to different topic, and that's why they'll continue to grow, and they're doing a great job. But it doesn't mean for those who haven't started a podcast yet that it's too late. For brands that have a big database, a large audience already, the opportunity for them to launch and market a podcast successfully and grow an audience is going to be even greater. What's coming up on the next episode of Be Podcasting?
Next episode, we'll be joined in the studio by our very own digital marketing expert, Beck Kempster, to explore the benefits podcast creation is bringing to the world of online communities.
Yes, I'm looking forward to having her here with us. So that you don't miss out on all that's coming up, why not subscribe to Be Podcasting in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher? And if you found this valuable, we'd love you to leave a review. And for more about us, you can go to be.com.au or Twitter at BEMediaProd, or drop us a line at info@be.com.au. Don't hesitate to ask us a question about the world of podcasting.
Yeah, and if we like your question, we might even include it in a future episode.
We may, if it's a good one. We've actually been helping brands of all sizes create audio to communicate their messages for more than 3 decades, and we'd love to discuss working with you. Well, that ends episode 7 of Be Podcasting. From all of us at Be Media Production, thanks so much for listening.
Be Podcasting is produced by the team at Be Media Production. Managing Director Nick Schildberger. Executive Producer Heather Dawson. Producer Chris Ashmore. And I'm Peter Letts, Director of Audio. For more about us, go to be.com.au.